1. All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's Community Services Committee meeting. It is June the 7th, and here with me in chamber today is Councillor Bosch. Absent is Councillor Berg, and soon to be here via Zoom would be Mayor Clayton. But that is our committee today, and we will call this meeting to order. To start things off, we have a couple delegations who said that they would come in today here. And as if you're watching at home, if you want to present as a delegation, by all means, you can come to our council meetings or our committee meetings. Just fill out an application to appear as a delegate, and we would welcome you with open arms. That being said, opening my arms now to our first delegation scheduled to be here today for a report on city funding and where it all went. We have Miss Candace Hook from the Centre for Creative Arts. I'll ask you to come up to the Centre Stadium, and I know you've done this before, but just a reminder to the people at home, because we got a couple pros in here. We asked that our delegation speak not too much longer than 5 minutes, and then we'll get to questions and all that stuff. But welcome, Ms. Hook. Glad to see you here.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name's Candace Hook. I'm the Executive Director at the Centre for Creative Arts. I'm also just recovering from a little case of laryngitis, so forgive me there. But I've been the Executive Director for almost 15 years, and this year I get to report on our 2021 year, which is a very unique year at the Centre. So at the Centre, we engage our community through a variety of visual arts and craft programming for a wide range of ages and also skill levels. So we have classes right from the very first art class you take through advanced workshops. Last weekend, we had an artist from Canmore. But primarily, our focus is on local artists and local residents and providing creative programming that appeals to them. Now, with that in mind, 2021, we were closed for basically half of the year, which was really unprecedented for us. But despite that, we still managed to offer 60 unique art and craft programs through the year. So when I say 60, some of those may have been one day, or some of those might have been 6 or 8 week classes where people are visiting each week. And those classes would have ranged between about 8 and 12 participants each. We had about 400 individuals participate in those classes. We were able to offer 6 weeks of summer camp last year, which is up from 2 weeks from the year before, but down from the 2 weeks that we usually present and will present this year. We had 80 youth participate last year. This year will be more around the 200 mark, which is more typical for our summer camp program. We also reached over 1,000 students additionally through our Healing Arts program. The numbers were a little bit higher for that one because we have really great community partners through that program, and we found ways to implement that programming through distance programming, art kits, different ways we could keep that community engaged. And I'll talk a little bit more about the Healing Arts program in a second, but we adapted it. So with our public health restrictions, we had to relook at how we were delivering programming over the last year. So we did some take-home art kits. We opened a new area on our website where it had step-by-step tutorials focusing on different arts and craft techniques every week. We sent our advertising coordinator to Marketing 101 bootcamp and really hit the ground with our social media. So we used it not so much as a pause, but as a chance to build our toolkit and come out a little bit stronger and really manage to reach people in a different way. Like we're hands-on people, so we want to get people in there touching the clay and in a group and enjoying each other and building that community feel. But over the last year, I feel like we did what we could to do that as much as we could. In addition to the adaptations we had to make to our programming, we had to make some adaptations to our operations. No one knew how long this was going to go on for, and it was really not clear also, like we were accessing federal funding programs as much as possible, especially like wage subsidies, and you never knew how long that was going to last for. So we really turtled up. We had our staff rotating through doing things like janitorial and snow removal. We had our building set on, base building settings with just the lights on in our office or working remotely. So we managed to save a lot of money through those operational expenses last year, which is great because we're positioned to be strong as we recover. But when we look at when you guys look at our operational numbers last year and like what we spent on the facility, it is notable that it is a little bit lower than typical. It just would not be sustainable to keep doing that forever. But it was a great way to get us through in a pinch, and we have such a great team there. I know a lot of you guys know our team members, and everyone really pulled strong together. Especially, through our Healing Arts program, we have a lot of community partners for that. We work with other community groups, social service agencies. We're funded through the United Way and the Community Foundation for that program. And then we also put some of our operational funding into that program as well. Through the Healing Arts program, we see amazing results. Happy classes allow students to experience a sense of positive accomplishment, overcome isolation, build self-esteem, unlock hidden talents, and express themselves through a healthy outlet. It's really a chance for people to find something in themselves that they didn't even know they had, and through COVID, that was incredibly important. Some of our students were especially isolated during COVID, so we were really happy to be able to follow up with them with even like weekly check-ins over the phone or email, depending on the student, from their instructor, encouraging them to keep creating. They could send in their pieces and we would give them advice, add a little white here, take a little away there. If anyone had what we felt was an economic barrier to getting them supplies, we were breaking down our big bulk supplies into little bitty take-home kits that they could have so that they were able to keep creating. And that program, these numbers report March through March, but we had 1,300 individuals March through March in the past year. Sorry. And then our galleries and gift shop, I believe almost all of you have been into our galleries and gift shop. We have 2 gallery spaces and a gift shop space. And what makes them very unique is our focus is 100% local. We only show our members' work. Membership is not, there's not a barrier to entry. Membership is $25 a year. It's very accessible and it's open to all Peace Country residents. So you have to live in the Peace Country to have your work for sale at the center. And then we have opportunities for people to exhibit their work if they're just starting out in the arts and they're, not ready to invest in that membership yet, or not looking to sell their work, just looking to share it with their community. And it's a really great local opportunity. Our galleries and gift shop allow a very inclusive opportunity for local artists to further their career. They get to work with our curatorial team and present their work in a really engaging way to the community. The galleries are just part of our wonderful facility, which I'd love to have the new council come by and take a tour one day. Or I've talked to a few of you about, if you ever want to do team building, we could do a pottery class or get you doing stained glass or something fun. But we have a lot of specialized equipment. The facility is owned by the city of Grande Prairie. It's a beautiful facility. It was originally a courthouse, and through the years, we've made improvements. About 10 years ago, we did a major renovation, and now it's all broken up into studio spaces. A lot of them are multifunctional, and especially during COVID, we have a large space on the 3rd floor that we were able to offer more programming because we had that large space. So even with capacity restrictions, we could keep our summer camps and healing arts classes running through there. So we love to be stewards of that building. And now that COVID is more back to normal, our facility committee is really hitting the ground running and looking at what the next to do is on that list. Recently, we've made upgrades to the building, a full renovation of our pottery studio. We've added flooring to several of the spaces, and we upgraded to energy efficient blinds throughout. But in the future here, we're looking at doing some lighting upgrades in our gallery and gift shop. And our neon sign in the front that is burnt out is getting upgraded with something more energy efficient and modern, but it's going to be very in keeping with the tradition there. So we're happy to make improvements, and we're really happy with the partnership with the City of Grande Prairie to be allowed to be operating out of that space. And it doesn't just benefit the center. We have community partners that aren't so lucky to have a whole facility. Sorry, I'll wrap it up. But I should just mention really quickly that community groups like the Figure Drawing Group, the Prima, Artists North, the Grande Prairie Guild of Artists, the Photography Club, they all meet at no cost in our space. So thank you so much for your support throughout the year, because without that, we couldn't do what we do, and a lot of the artists in the community couldn't access the equipment and facilities that they have at the center. So thank you so much.
And thank you very much, Ms. Hook, and thank you to the Centre for giving our local residents and Peace Region artists a space to call home and a space to put their art in places to display for sale or for personal enjoyment of our public. So I'll open the floor up to questions. I have Councillor Bosch here first in the queue, and then Councillor Blackmore.
Thank you, Candace, for coming in. That was awesome. I have participated in some of your programs, albeit I'm not very good at it, but the fact is that you start from beginners, so that's fantastic. My question to you is, with this diversification that you've done through online and kits, are you going to continue that even though potentially everything's open?
So sub things. So one in particular that we're going to continue is all of our exhibits continued through COVID. We installed them as we normally would. They were usually only viewed by the artists in their small circle of family or friends by appointment. But we put them up on our YouTube channel and we did full digital documentation of them. And we found that that allowed, because all of our artists are local, but sometimes their collectors are spread out throughout the country, family, friends, people that own other pieces. So our sales stayed really consistent in our gallery, which offers great opportunities for our artists. So we'll continue to present those digitally. And then our programming, we heard back from teachers that a lot of them were stealing ideas from our website and using them in our class. So I think that we'll keep updating that regularly. I can't see us moving to like a full digital model for our art classes. There's a lot of people doing a really good job at that, and honestly, we just don't have the tech, the equipment, and we love in person is where we thrive. So we're going to stick to our roots, but use some of these digital tools and keep expanding our reach through them.
Right. You're aware that the city is designated municipal historical designation for your building?
Yes.
So that's exciting.
We're very excited about it. We all love that building. It's such a gem in the city. So I'm excited to see how that moves forward. And I really enjoy working with Charles from the museum, and I trust his leadership on this program. So we're very excited to see what comes through that.
That's great. I see good things for you. So that's awesome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Councillor Bosch. Councillor Blackmore.
Hi, Candace.
Hi.
I'm really pleased that your Happy program is still running and doing well. You know that that's really dear to my heart as being an initial funder on that. So that's encouraging. I'm wondering, though, your wearable art fashion show was always a really big part of your programming every year. Were you able to do that through COVID, or are you going to bring that back, or what's happening with the wearable art?
So that's a hot topic for us right now at the center. It is such a unique event, and in 2021 we did bring it back in a digital format, and we used some of the provincial funding we got from Culture Days that year to do a documentary about wearable art, just a little short one, and the history of it and some of the artists that are involved. So you can view that on our YouTube channel, and then we had some in-person installations of it that year. This year we decided to pause because it's a huge event to ramp up and then have to take a break on, especially with all the artists committing their time and energy to make the pieces unfunded, you know. So we took a pause on it this year. Our programs committee is doing kind of a deep dive on the event, and just seeing how it's going to be reinvented post-COVID, but it is pretty near and dear to our hearts.
Well, I look forward to hearing more about that later. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councillor Blackmore. Looking around the room, I don't see any other hands going up, but I do have a question, Ms. Hook, just in regards to the city's funding. So for 2021, 67% of the funds received by the Centre for Creative Arts went to utilities, insurance, janitorial, snow removal, maintenance, pretty much building upkeep, all facility upkeep. Are you seeing those numbers shift? Because I do like that at least a third is going to programs and servicing. But with the high price of energy and gas and stuff like that, I would imagine that that's going to start eating into what the center can offer for programs through the types of grants that the city's giving them. So how are you doing so far this year in 2022 with the cost of utilities?
Poorly. As everyone is, but we've also during this time, I think you're going to be really surprised when you look at our numbers in a year, in 2 years, because our funding has been relatively stagnant. Sometimes slightly up, slightly down, but pretty much around that same mark for quite some time. During that time, obviously, expenses increase. But during that time, there's also been changes to our lease agreement with the City of Grande Prairie. So some of the operational expenses, a huge one is snow removal for our building that used to be covered by the City of Grande Prairie, now has to be completely absorbed by the center. It was a tiered thing. It wasn't all in 1 year, but it's now 100% our cost. Last year, myself and our staff removed the snow. Like when we were closed, we shoveled every day. So these numbers are not reflective of what our operational numbers are going to be next year. So it is important to consider that. I think when you look at the funding model for the City of Grande Prairie, we are housed in a historic building. We do have an obligation to upkeep that. People that come in don't know necessarily that we're a separate entity from the city. Like people associate that building with the City of Grande Prairie. And so we have to maintain it to a certain standard. We do get a lot of assistance from the facility department. We're not left high and dry, but those operational costs are daunting. And next year, it's going to be closer to $100,000. Like it's definitely not going to be that 1/3 that you were thinking of.
Okay, well, thank you. Definitely something to think more of going forward, especially as we approach our budgets. Looking around, see no other questions. So I'd like to thank you, Ms. Hook, for coming in today and presenting to the city and for all the great services that the Center for Creative Arts provides. Happy to be a part of that and all your successes. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, so moving right along, we have our second scheduled delegation here today to talk a little bit about volunteerism and what it means to our community. So we have Caroline Prsemka coming from the Grande Prairie Volunteer Services Bureau. Welcome, Caroline.
Good morning. Let's see if I can get myself situated here. So thank you everyone for having me today. I'm not going to talk so much about volunteerism as I'm going to talk about the volunteer organizations and the impact of stuff that's happening to them. So I had a thought the other day when I first arrived in Grande Prairie in 2013. There was kind of like this old guard, of how business was done, and a lot of things moved a certain way. And over the last 9 years, this has shifted. And I was in a pre-planning meeting for another group the other day. And in that group, there were only 2 people who had been at the original meeting in 2013. And I thought, oh my God, I've become part of the old guard. So, time to change things up. But anyway, having said that, we are living in extraordinary times. This is a time period that most of us in our lifetime have not seen. We've come through a pandemic. We're in the middle of a European war. There's been the reshaping of the supply chains. We have climate change. There's been a doubling of commodity prices and enormous economic upheaval worldwide. So it's not a focus of Canada, it's not a focus of Alberta, it's not a focus of Grande Prairie. It is worldwide upheaval. So our little pocket here isn't going to solve it, but we can do a few things. The Bank of Canada has stated that inflation at 5% costs the average Canadian an additional $2,000 a year. Last month, inflation in Canada was at 6.3%, so 1.3 above 5%. It's affecting our more vulnerable members of society, mostly because the prices of essential items like food and gasoline have risen rapidly and are continuing to rise. So the prediction is that we will hit 10% inflation. We are several inflationary points behind Europe. We're a couple of inflation points behind the United States, but we are still there. Nonprofit providers are needed to fill those critical gaps that are left by government and services and support, because the government can't afford to do this. So of this, we know, based on predictions, that 15% of Canadians will not be able to afford basic necessities, such as groceries, gas, or medicine. We know that 29% will need to cut back on their basic necessities. We also know that 26% of Canadians expect to use or are already using charitable services to meet their basic necessities. And this is a problem. It's a problem in this area as well. It's getting off of this scot-free. Nonprofit organizations function as small businesses. We operate with extremely tight budgets and lacking the capacity to deal with unexpected costs, meaning that we're one crisis away from closing the doors. All nonprofits basically are in that situation. And I'm not here advocating for more money for my agency, by the way, so let's just take that right off the table right away. In terms of employment, the sector employs approximately 10% of Canadians in full-time workers. That's nearly as many people as in the manufacturing industry in Canada, and more people than in construction, agricultural, and forestry services, which are all essential services. So stop and think about that a little bit. That's 10% of your workforce, or 8% around here. In 2021, we looked at approximately 656 organizations in the Grande Prairie region. And within that, we estimated about 12,625 volunteers. Out of that, 78% of those organizations bring in less than $250,000 a year. 90% employ 10 or fewer full-time staff, but they do have one or two for them, some of them. And some of them have over 100 staff. It just depends on the nature of the organization. 58% are fully run by volunteers. Of all of our organizations, around 58% have no paid staff. They're all run by volunteers. In-kind contributions in the region for 2021 came in at just a little under $47 million in kind. So all of our communities put together could not afford to pay for those kinds of services. Simply couldn't. You guys got an extra, 30 million kicking around? If you do, share. Okay. So we have a lot of issues, though, facing the sector. Primarily right now, the biggest one is going to be the loss of staff. People are tired. They're burnt out, especially at your leadership level. And we're seeing that now. We're starting to see the EDs are resigning from critical positions around the city. Not quite as bad as the slowdown in 2011. In 2011, there was a slowdown, and then again in 2015, when there was a slowdown of the economics here in Grande Prairie. In 2016, we had 13 ED switch positions. So that was huge. We haven't seen that again, but it's probably coming. We have mental health ramifications for staffing. Again, people are tired, and there really are not that many support services around. And we have increased workload based on the other data additional responsibilities in assisting with recovery, and staff are having to acquire new skill sets and new knowledge within a short period of time. This is going to impact on childcare and after-school programs and day camps. So those are explicit on those. Services to racialized populations and social justice supports. Urban, Indigenous, Black, and immigrant communities have been particularly impacted by the pandemic, and the nonprofit sector is a primary provider of services to those groups. Mental health services, sports fall under mental health. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just giving you the signal for time.
Okay. Environmental sustainability, services to people with disabilities, services to seniors, and health services and support. The other huge issue facing the nonprofits, and it was just alluded to by Hope in your previous presentation, is technology. We are so far behind, especially in this area, and the funding is just not there to support that. And then the other one is the young adults. The young adults are facing just as much in terms of services required and barriers against them as most of the nonprofits are. So again, services that are providing supports there are struggling to meet those needs. I'm giving you a couple of handouts. One of them is this thing called centralization. This is my big bugbear, okay? Is when you centralize services, you are taking away from other communities and you are creating more social issues within your larger urban centers. That's a whole talk in itself. But there's the diagrams. I make great diagrams. The other is the nonprofit starvation cycle, and this is where you really have to stop and think about how you fund and how you make those funds available. When you fund for a program, that's great, but the nonprofit groups still have to turn on the lights. And so what's happening is they underreport what their actual administration costs are. And so funders want the groups to do more for less. The groups are reporting that they're doing more for less, and they're not. And what ends up happening is that you end up with financial turmoil. The groups have inadequate resources because they cannot decide on their own what they need. They make do. They go without. They start paying less. They lose good people. Pretty soon they have mission drift because they have to find funding elsewhere. They don't make the outcomes, and then you're down into this cycle where you're losing good organizations because of this operational costs. My recommendation would be that when you're looking at this next funding cycle, is increase the percentage of operational dollars involved with these programs. Right now you have 10% of 10%.
Well, you're good.
I know I'm good.
Cool. Yeah.
Good job.
Well, I was just stating the obvious. I'm sorry. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to be the chair. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. I hate to speed it along there, but it's all very important stuff, and I'm sure we can engage in more conversation through questions as well. So I'll look around. I have Councillor Bosch.
Hi, Caroline. Nice to see you. Thorough as expected. I'm not surprised. My question to you is, because you see an overview of many not-for-profits, are you seeing an amalgamation of organizations coming together to reduce their maintenance and operational and, all those costs? Are people doing that yet?
It's starting. It's slow. A lot of this is, there's a history of putting people into silos, mostly because of competition for like for grants and things like that. So there's a little bit of trust. We've been working very hard to rebuild a lot of that. I would think that when you look at basic costs, it's kind of operational dollars are really out of people's control in terms of those kinds of building administration fees. But yeah, there's more collaboration. There's collaboration on programs, not so much on operations.
Right. I'm starting to see in the business world where different companies will move into the same, building to save on that, as our citizens are,
Yeah.
having their parents move in with them to save costs and such. So just curious if that sector has started to move that same way.
Slowly starting.
No choice, right?
No choice. But there's also where do you move? There's space shortages everywhere, and and stuff is expensive. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bosch. I have a question, Ms. Pasemko. In regards to, I agree with the model. I wish you'd had submitted these beforehand so I could have digested them when I went over my agenda package. But I will look at this later when I get home, because just from the first page, I think I agree that centralization puts a lot of people at risk. But my question is, in regards to how we can help the not-for-profit sector to continue to thrive, one of your suggestions was maybe more operational dollars. But are there any other insights that you might have garnered through your research and through your working experience as to what else municipalities can do to help their not-for-profit sector thrive that maybe isn't cash contributory?
I think advocating to higher levels. All right. Part of that, again, follows that centralization idea. When nonprofits, we have a variety of sources of funding that comes through. But when you have your next level of government saying, well, we only want to fund contracts and resources that can operate out of larger centers and provide services to outlying communities, that really impacts on the outlying communities. When you have groups that are saying, well, we're just going to provide a little bit here or there. So like a contract, a number of organizations will have provincial contracts. Right now, those provincial contracts are going to groups in Edmonton or Calgary with the understanding that those groups will provide services in Grande Prairie, in Lethbridge, in Red Deer kind of thing. Whereas they used to come here. And in fact, and this is one of my huge bugbears, there's a number of contracts that would normally go to NGOs, nonprofits, charities in Grande Prairie, were all lumped together. The province did this and gave it to a firm out of Toronto. I am still enraged. And the ministers know it. Because I think I burnt up the phone lines.
I can feel it right now.
It takes away from the communities. And I think the municipalities, the municipal governments, need to advocate that those dollars be spread into their communities.
Yeah, because I get what you're saying, because if a firm in Edmonton or Calgary is providing services for North or South Alberta and they say, we'll do this, then that turns Grande Prairie, Lethbridge, and everyone that's not close to those centralized cities into outliers. And then we get less service for the contract service that's being paid out.
And it has this chain effect. And my thing is, and always has been, you don't know the community. So these groups that are coming in, they don't know the community. So how are they going to provide adequate services for the community, especially a firm out of Toronto?
Yeah, it's a bugbear for me too.
I'm being nice now.
I'm looking around. I don't see any hands shooting up. I want to thank you for coming in and raising an important issue that faces our entire community. So, and thank you for your hard work and dedication to the VSB. And I know you won't be a silent voice in our community. So, thanks for coming.
No.
Never. Thank you very much,
All right,
Carol Ann.
thank you.
Right, moving right along. We're going to turn the cameras over to our Director of Community Services, Mr. Arlen Miller, for his Director Service Area Report. The show's on, my friend.
All right, thanks, Chair Thiessen. So the theme of my report today is I'm just going to talk about upcoming events in our community and opportunities as well. So as Council's aware, our committee, the outdoor pool opened on the weekend of May 27th. Unfortunately, it was cold, wet, and windy, but we did still have some people show up on Sunday. So to date, we've had over 900 users come and use the pool. So that's good news. And then we have an exciting lineup at our venues over the next little while here, including June 11th is Try It Day. June 11th as well is Pride Carnival and Breakfast. On the same day, we have the Seniors Free Luncheon. Then June 17th and 18th, the Aquarians Regional Swim Meet is taking place. June 25th, the Piranhas Home Swim Meet takes place. And then in Catherine's area, or events and entertainment, we have the Canadian rock band, the Arkells, are coming to Bonnett's Energy Centre on October 22nd, and tickets are on sale already. The Pride Society Teen Dance will be held at the Bose Centre on June 10th, and the sold-out Party in White is also following on June 11th. And the Friendship Centre will be hosting their first annual grand gathering in the Bose on June 18th. And then all our seasonal outdoor assets are now open, which is the spray decks, the Bear Paw Golf Course as well, and the Sandy Dump for those coming to town to use for their RVs as well are open. Over at the Heritage Village, which is adjoined to the GP Museum, it's now open. It's the hours of operation are Tuesday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Weekends is 12 to 6 p.m. It's over 20, nearly 20 historical and replica buildings, and they're relocated and restored from the Grande Prairie area for those who aren't familiar with it. And then just a note on transit as well. So today is a migration to the new accessible transit software. And some of the benefits of it is the clients can now book their own trips on the web starting today using a mobile app, or using a mobile app kicks in August as well. And some of the benefits of that is if they sign up for alerts, they'll be notified on their phone the day before the ride, also when the bus is arriving within 15 minutes before, and then when it is at their front door as well. Benefits for our staff are it's easier to interface with their clients, more intuitive. It's also increased efficiency at ride allocation, and the system also builds in the breaks for our drivers. So to keep our staff, look after our staff, it builds in their designated times for some time off, or coffee breaks, lunch breaks as well. So, and that's my report, Mr. Chair, unless there's any questions.
Thank you very much, Director Miller. Looking around, I have Councillor Bressie first in queue.
Great. Thank you, Chair Thiessen, and thank you, Director Miller. I'm very excited to hear about that transit software. That's a celebration moment for me. But my questions are about the outdoor pool. I'm curious, just look at the schedule. I don't see these things on there yet. Are there plans this year to use the Don Gillies Fund or some other funding this year to make sure that lower income kids are able to get into that pool?
Director Miller.
The Chair, yes, we have talked about that with the CKC manager, and I'm sure we'll make sure that happens.
Awesome. Thank you. And then one other question. I haven't been able to find information about lessons at the outdoor pool. Are those going to be available this season?
Through the Chair, I'm not sure on lessons at the outdoor pool, but I'll follow up and send something back to Council, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you. And just speaks that a little bit. I don't know about the rest of Council. For me, that would be a priority. I know that there's a lot of low-income families on that end of town where transportation to Eastlink Centre has been identified by a number of them as barriers to getting their kids into swimming lessons. So I sure hope that we get to see some lessons at that pool. I think that would be really good for a lot of our families on the north end of town. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bressie. I do have a follow-up question for Councillor Bressie's. How's our lifeguard training and recruitment going at the Eastlink Centre currently?
Thanks, Chair Thiessen. The last information I received is we are doing well now, and we've recruited I think almost everybody we need, or filled most of our positions, and no concerns with the outdoor pool for staffing for the summer as well. So.
Awesome. Okay, that's good news. Good news, and perhaps we can address Councillor Bressy's priority in sometime in the future. Looking around, I don't see any other hands going up. So I have one more question for you. It's actually in regards to the Bonnets Energy Center. I know that we have representation here today, but speaking with the new concession facilitator owner, John from Better Than French taking over the spot, there's been a lot of construction delays, and that he feels like that's it's on schedule? Okay. He was just expressing that there was some frustration. So my question really was in regards to our construction schedules. When we're working on inside facilities, is why doesn't the city typically, or do we, because I'm not aware, do we facilitate overnight construction? So like when we tender a contract, a lot of our facilities are open 9 to 5. And there's people coming and going, and sometimes you got to stop the construction because it's real loud. But it seems like there would be no barriers if we were able to do overnight construction. And so where does the city stand on those types of procurements for rehabilitating our facilities, I guess?
Right. Thanks, Chair Thiessen. I know we have specified that in the past for certain projects that work after hours. An example would be Eastlink, when we had to redo the sprinkler heads. I think they worked through the night when there was no clients in the building. So for construction at Bonnets, I think it has been ongoing for several months, but I wasn't aware it was too disruptive. But and as far as the schedule, I believe it was anticipated to be done by about mid-June. So I think we are right on track. But I'll take that feedback to Mr. Phillips as well, and try to keep it in mind for future projects as well, if we can move it into evening or overnight hours.
Okay. No, thank you very much for that. Just looking for clarity because I didn't know how to respond to what our construction schedules look like. Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, you're off the hook, Director Miller. So we'll move this show right along. And move it to item 3.2, our Regional Recreation Coordinator renewal. This is renewal of a position and for Regional Recreation. And I'll leave it to Ms. Katie Bieberdorf to present here. Ms. Bieberdorf.
Morning. Thank you, Chair Thiessen. The Regional Recreation Committee is a partnership between the City, the County of Grande Prairie, the towns of Beaver Lodge, Wembley, and Sexsmith, as well as the MD of Greenview. The purpose of the committee is to implement the Joint Recreation Master Plan, which was created in 2016. All municipalities contribute to cost sharing for the coordinator position, which is currently a 0.75 FTE, and the position is currently hosted by the City. The Regional Recreation Committee has supported a contract extension to the end of 2023, with the city's portion being $45,755, and each individual council is required to approve the 2023 position. So administration is requesting that committee recommend council approve the Regional Recreation Coordinator position for 2023.
Quick and easy. Thank you very much, Ms. Bieberdorf. I'll look around for any questions arising from Ms. Bieberdorf's report. Seeing none, I'll just make a comment. I can't make motions here, but I think it's a great thing. I think so far we're building into more successes, and we can't do that without the right people in the right places. And this is a small cost to bear for something that's going to, I guess, sew everything together throughout the region as far as recreation. So I'll look to Councillor Boss for that motion.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen, because I'm the only one left. So. Thank you. I move that committee recommend council approve the renewal of the Regional Recreation Coordinator position for 2023 at a 0.75 FTE and direct administration to proceed with funding as recommended.
The motion is in order and as presented. Looking for discussion or debate on the motion. Seeing none, I'll call it to question.
Mayor Creighton votes in favor.
That motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Ms. Bieberdorf. And that pretty much concludes the the online version of this. We're going to move into an in-camera for our next portion. Okay, yeah, that's, sorry, I was corrected by our clerk to do our outstanding items list. And so before we go into camera, I will turn it right back to Director Miller.
All right, thanks, Chair Thiessen. So 4 items remaining, and they're all on track to meet the expected report dates.
Very good. I'll look for a motion to approve.
Thank you, Chair Thiessen. I move that committee receive the June 7th, 2022 outstanding items list as presented for information.
Very good. That motion's in order. It's a call to question. All in favor?
Mayor Clayton votes in favor.
And Councillor Bosch votes in favor as well. So it should be unanimous, and it is. Thank you very much. And now I will entertain a motion to go into camera. Councillor Bosch.
I move to go in camera.
That motion's simple and in order. Call to question.
In favor.
I'm certain this will pass, but thank you everyone for being here today, online and in person. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you in a bit.